Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty at a Haggerty10 Twitter handle, as you all know by now, and I'm joined today by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW and at Aidan Macdonald at Aidan C Macdonald. Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing?
All good, Tony. Aye, yourself?
Yes,
Aidan?
very well. Aidan,
Yeah, I'm good, guys. How are you?
Fine. Now, first things first, just direct you to the bottom. This is your last chance to subscribe to the Celtic Way website. Our offer ends some point this week. It's covering Scottish football journalism and Celtic in particular. It's cost you £1 for 3 months of unlimited access to everything that we do on the website. That's £1 for 3 months, guys. Great offer. Take advantage of that before that offer ends, and it's all for the click of a button. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe.
Ends tonight, Tony.
It ends tonight.
Ends tonight. Yep, last chance.
Well, why not take advantage of that? We thank those that have already taken advantage of that. £1 for 3 months, guys. Offer ends tonight. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. You know what to do. Hit that button. And we also say thank you to SENECA. And as we all know, the Celtic Way Morning Briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group, and SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. Now, gentlemen, we were cheering on the Celtic Women last night. They were playing Rangers at Broadwood. Nice wee game there, Sean.
Quiet Monday night.
Yeah. Quiet Monday night, indeed. Monday night football, the MNF, all went a bit. Pete Tong at the end, but we'll talk about that in the due course. But Sean, Celtic drew 1-1, keeps them a point ahead of Rangers in the table. But sadly, at the end of the game was marred by an alleged headbutt incident involving a member of the Rangers coaching staff on Celtic coach Fran Alonso. But actually before that, it was quite a dramatic game and quite an exciting game. 99th minute equaliser from Celtic's Caitlin Hayes. As I say, keeps them a point ahead of Rangers and 8 points, Aidan, behind Glasgow City at the top of the Women's Premier League, isn't it? Is that right? If memory serves.
8 points.
Yeah, point ahead of Rangers, which I suppose in the context, they were chasing the title. I suppose technically they're still in it. It is quite a gap between them and Glasgow City, but primarily in that derby, especially after beating them a few weeks ago, to go 1 down and then to score virtually the last kick of the game, as you said, 99th minute. And it was a good finish as well, got to say. I think that the primary concern is that it keeps them ahead of Rangers in that second spot as well.
Indeed. Now, Aidan, don't particularly want to talk about the unsavoury incidents, but we can't really ignore it. But we were talking off air and we all felt that Fran Alonso handled himself very well by going up and speaking to the media after it and not making a big deal about it.
Yeah, he spoke to Sky, obviously, after the game, and he was downplaying it. He wasn't trying to make it about that. He was trying to make it about his team and his sort of happiness at them managing to get a point. So, yeah, he conducted himself very well from that perspective, Tony, definitely.
Sean?
I think it was only natural that they asked about it. I mean, Rachel Cossey was their former Scotland captain. She was basically, she called it out right away and said it was just there was no place for that kind of behaviour. But I think it was naturally get asked about it. I think to his credit, the way that he handled it by not letting that. Obviously, it is a story like that. There is no doubt that has become the story after it. But to his credit, I felt he handled himself with quite a lot of calmness, a lot of composure, given what had just happened, to go straight over, talk at pitch side where it had just happened, and he still had the kind of wherewithal to try and steer the conversation back to what had just happened on the park before that, in terms of his team managing to show that kind of we don't stop mentality, I suppose, because that's what the account tweeted out, and managing to get that draw with virtually the last kick of the game. So I think that was to Fran Alonso's credit. He handled himself really well with that.
I thought he composed himself and handled himself with a bit of class and a bit of dignity. As you say, didn't make a big meal of it. Don't know how he was feeling inside about what had happened, but as you say, all he wanted to do was talk about the football, and he brushed it aside. And I guess the relevant authorities, Sean, will deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening earlier on. It was former Celtic striker Little John that was on TalkSport, I think it was, saying she presumes that the football authorities will be involved, but there very well might be something beyond that as well. We'll need to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, Aidan, you agree with that the football authorities should step in?
Yeah, I mean, I think they will. Obviously, it was a sort of prime time game. I think it was the first women's league game on Sky as well, or the first Glasgow derby anyway on Sky. And obviously, plenty of eyes on the product. That's not the sort of image we'll be wanting to portray. So I'd imagine the SFA will get involved. Yeah.
And if you're wondering why we've not named them and used alleged, there are legal reasons for that. And that, right, Sean? Just keep yourself on the right side.
Well, we don't want to start getting ourselves, but I mean, I think everybody saw the clip.
Yes.
You don't need us really to say it, but I think as I say, the football authorities for sure, for certain, will be looking at that, but it might go beyond that. We don't know if it has yet. So
correct. Well, good on the women for going, as you say, Sean, right to the end with the same mentality as the men. We never stopped. Caitlin Hayes smashing home a 99th minute equaliser. Aidan after. There was injury time within the injury time, wasn't there? I think one of the Rangers players had gone down for like 3 minutes.
Yes,
which is where the rest of the time came from. Given
Yeah, it was one of those World Cup games that just kept going on and on. But no, that's also Caitlin Hayes' third goal in 2 games against Rangers as well, because she got a double in the 3-0 match. So obviously she enjoys scoring against them. But yeah, it could be an important point in terms of Champions League qualification, etc. coming the end of the season. But there is still plenty of football to be played in the league. That was the first post split fixture, for Celtic last night. So I think that there's still another 9 matches. So the league isn't over by any stretch, but it probably will be. It will be tough against Glasgow City because 8 points is quite a commanding lead.
Just on that note, Tony, Aidan's right. Obviously first in the league gets the champions, but also they get a place in the Women's Champions League for next year. Second place does get a place as well. So it's got very real potential consequences later on if say it stays a point between the two of them. And that's assuming they don't catch Glasgow City, but say it is a point between them for second, then that Caitlin Hayes goal will be able to be pinpointed.
Yeah, but it could be a vital strike come the end of the season, and also bearing in mind that it's against the current champions Rangers or the current league holders, aren't they? So
yeah, and to be honest, all 3 teams, Glasgow City are going well, Celtic are going well, Rangers are going well. All 3 have genuinely fantastic records. Celtic have got the best defence, have only conceded 5 goals in 23 games. But then Rangers have only conceded 6 and Glasgow City have only conceded 7. And all 3 of them have already got more than 90 goals. So it's the 3 of them are clearly the cream of the crop there. But it will still be an achievement. Whether they manage to catch Glasgow City or not, if they get that second place in the Champions League, it is still a massive achievement.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a great achievement, but it would be their first league title if they win it, wouldn't it, Aidan, under Fran Alonso?
Yeah, under the SW sort of PL banner, it would be. I mean, it would also be Fran Alonso's first league title as well, won a double last year, so it would be a sort of good progression. But I think it is worth pointing out, like Sean mentioned there, if they don't catch Glasgow City, who are also a very good team, previous years they've got to the latter stages of the Champions League. If Celtic was to just make it into that competition, previously they've been involved in the sort of qualifying process, I think that would be a good achievement in itself. It might not be the same as a lot of people's to trophies, but I think that would be a good achievement.
Yeah, guys are coming in there and saying Glasgow City, that powerhouse. Yeah, they have indeed. They've dominated the women's game for long and weary, haven't they? And you were saying they won 12 out of the last 13 league titles, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and obviously Rangers won it last year, but they were basically flawless in that time, going unbeaten. So that sort of shows you how sort of high a level you need to play to try and beat them. But Celtic, the fact is there is still 9 matches left, so Celtic will still need to play Glasgow City, etc. Plenty of football in that time. But I think even though the point was good, the fact that was sort of a game in hand come the end of the season, if they don't win the league, it might get looked at as potentially a missed opportunity.
Correct, but also might get looked at as
it depends.
Depends on how it goes. Yeah, correct. Nice one. Pete McGee, it was a game of 2 halves for sure. The girls were much better in the second half and deserved the point. I thought they deserved the point as well. I thought they were the only ones.
So did I, and I agree with you. I think they did look a wee bit better after the break.
Yeah, nice one. Now, you thought that was explosive, Sean. Let me hand it over to you. We have got our latest Celtic Way Power Rankings, and I'm going to ask you, Sean, to explain the concept again because people might be surprised by the ratings in this, but on you go, Sean.
Well, they know who to blame, Tony.
Well, that's fair enough.
No. Most of you on here are regulars. You'll probably have at least experienced one of these before, but it's on the website, as you know, or as subscribers will know anyway. We do detailed man-by-man Celtic ratings for every game, every competitive game, even the friendlies, but this is all only competitive games that it concerns. So international breaks, so the last one we done at the World Cup, we collate them. I keep them on a big spreadsheet, and we collate them, average them out, put them to you, and at the end of the campaign, whoever's top with the best average rating is a player of the season. Last year it was Cameron Carter-Vickers in the end, and we always feel that this has always been a kind of more natural way to measure what's been going on game by game, rather than just like plucking 10, 20 names out of a hat after the games. We're measuring them as the games go on, and you're basically getting the opinions as game by game, rather than just saying, right, well, somebody played well for 5 of those, so I'll put them top, and we're doing it game by game with actual ratings. So it's very much an eye test thing. It comes from our detailed ratings, so it's whether it's Tony or me or Aidan, whoever's doing it, it's from those, so it's very much grounded in the eye test. But the threshold for inclusion this time, Tony, was just 900 minutes of action, so that's the equivalent of 10 full matches, which 42 games into the season I don't think is too much to ask, do you?
No.
But that said, quite a lot of players haven't reached that. So James Forrest isn't in it. Stephen Welsh, obviously James McCarthy, and then you've got the likes of Scott Bain, Benjamin Siegrist. But you've also got some of the bulk of the winter signings. So Yuki Kobayashi, nowhere near it. Tomoki Iwata, nowhere near it. And nowhere near it either. We excluded those who made the cut in minutes but were no longer at the club. So Georgios Giacomakis, who by the way would have been 12th, Maurice Jens, who would have been 13th, and Juranovic, who would have been 14th. So they're not in it because, well, they're not here anymore. So you feel as if, right, you're excluded at that point. So there was 17 players, guys, which was literally an odd number. So I wasn't quite happy with that when it came to making the graphic, but I had no choice. I'd set the boundary at that point. And like the last few times, if, for instance, you come on the last 5 minutes and it's not enough to warrant a match rating of like more than a 3 or whatever, then remove that, because it's not really fair to let that drag the rest of your marks down the way that it would. The only other thing is, where 2 players finish level in average rating, our tiebreaker is simply to give the nod to the player that played more, because they've managed to maintain that over a longer period of time. And that only happened once, I think, in the ratings. I think it was actually for a top 5 spot, but I think it was only once. That somebody tied an average rating. You'll see in a minute who made it in the top 5 at the expense of who. But we'll throw it up. And as always, we're here to accept your criticism. For I've got, I think, maybe 3 or 4 places here, Tony, that I think are going to get dragged up.
Yeah.
So, Aidan, I'll come to you first. What jumps out at you, and why is it Leila Bada?
Yeah, the Abada one was probably the first one that sort of popped up there. Obviously, he has been a bit in and out this year, hasn't he? His numbers are good, but he's not started a lot of games. And there's been, I know, just from individual matches, there has been the odd game recently that he was on from the start and he maybe didn't impress. So I suppose when I think about his numbers, it's surprising, but when I think about the actual context of how the list is getting put together, it is probably not as big.
Tony, going one further back, and you want to say the bottom of the list, but he's not the bottom of the squad. He's just the bottom of the qualified players. Clearly, David Turnbull, his contributions are still quite notable, and I think you can probably legitimately say that he's second string now, given the way that he's used. He's still had 5 goals and 4 assists in just over 1,200 minutes. He's still clearly a player Postecoglou has a lot of time for. He just can't find the game time for him necessarily. He's in the squads. He gets minutes, but he doesn't get starters game time. And I think that's probably taking its toll on his on the average rating, Tony.
Yeah, but he's why he's still there. And Postecoglou didn't sanction a loan move because he's still, when he does come on or he plays, he can make valid contributions. But at this moment in time, we spoke about the other day, there's just better players in front of him, isn't there? And that's why. But he still gets game time, and the manager lays a lot of stress on getting game time, doesn't he? Whether you play 30 minutes or 60 minutes, he always says you're still getting game time. So, and that's the emphasis, isn't it? That they come on, they impact the game and they make a valid contribution. And Turnbull has made a valid contribution, to be fair to him. And you highlighted his goals and assists, and You still have to have guys on the bench, Sean. Can't accommodate them all. Only 11 can start.
I think, Turnbull is almost in the kind of Abada mould in terms of he's always quite low down in these rankings, and I think a lot of it is to do with the way that he's used. And he gets half an hour rather than 10 minutes in a way that if he only get 10 minutes when he didn't start, he'd probably be higher up because his average rating would come up with that. But half an hour is a long enough time to make an impact. A lot of other players on this list, Haksabanovic is higher than him and actually has substantially made contributions when he's come on off the bench. I think 3 of his 5 match-winning goals have been when he's come off the bench and stuff. So it's almost to his detriment. But nonetheless, I want to reiterate, he's 17th and at the bottom of this, but it's the bottom qualifying player, not the bottom of the squad, because you'd obviously see the likes of McCarthy and even some of the new guys maybe not having got up to that level yet. But I've got a comment here from Derek Crawford, just saying we've got Bernabe higher than Abada. Interested in how we got there. Quite simply, I think it's because he's played less often, but when he has played, he tends to have started, and when he starts, he's actually done really well. Whereas Abada has played enough that some of his starts have not been very good. He's naturally inconsistent. I think we've spoken about that plenty of times, Aidan. But his contributions, sometimes they're not enough to actually get him that big at that higher rating and overcome the fact that his inconsistency means that for every time he comes on and gets a 7 or an 8, regularly starting and getting a 5, Tony.
Yeah, correct. And that'll be why. You qualify that it's 900 minutes, 10 games, and then you base it on that. And again, we're going back to this is our eye test. The 3 of us doing the eye test. Mostly me on the detailed player ratings, to be fair, but you guys have had shots this season. And, that's what the data is telling us. Our marks are telling us that that's the way the power rank. Yeah, we're always open, not to criticism, but discussion, because we know these throw up anomalies, or certainly anomalies. I mean, you look at that, and my glaring thing would say Ralston at 4th and Kyogo and Hatate at 9th and 10th. And again, that's explained by Ralston starts and how well he does in matches, Sean.
Well, that's the thing. As long as you meet the threshold, it doesn't really matter if you've played 901 minutes or 3,000 minutes. You've still played the 900 minutes. And to be honest, when you look at who's number 1 and who's number 3, it is possible to continue the consistency across thousands of minutes. Now, that's not to say that somebody like Kyogo, who's multiple 26 goals this season, is not consistent, because he clearly is, but not to the extent and the excellence that Carter Vickers and McGregor can sustain over thousands of minutes, is what this suggests. Now, Ralston was I think the closest to not making the cut, but he was still nowhere near it. It was still over 1,000 minutes. So, as I say, this is actually worth putting up from Kaiser, because I think he misunderstood. He's saying, has scored 3 and 10, which means he's played 10 games, but that doesn't mean he's played 900 minutes. So the 900 minutes is the equivalent of 10 full competitive games, which is I think that's a fair cutoff, given there's been 42 games in the season. So just appearing in 10 games doesn't mean you've played 10 games. Do you know what I mean? So Ralston's still nowhere near the cutoff. Ralston was well above it. So ultimately, I mean, the way to put it with Ralston is, 1,012 minutes or something, and for virtually all of those 1,012 minutes, he's been excellent.
Aidan, you go along with that?
Yeah, when it gets broken down like that, it does make sense. I think Ralston has been, just to take him as an example, I think he has been pretty good at times this season. He's obviously been in and out a wee bit more, but for the sort of times that he has featured, he has been involved, and his contributions have been pretty positive. I also know he is a favourite of Tony's as well, so in a way, I'm not surprised to see him up there, but I'm not saying it isn't justified.
TJ the Legend saying Real Hatate should be higher. I thought he would be higher, but what I will point out, and I was saying to the guys before it, is the first couple of times we did these rankings last season, I think there was only 2 players, and I think initially it was Jota and Kyogo, maybe 3. I think Callum McGregor might have been as well. The actually averaged over 7, and now you've got all the way down until Hatate. Every one of them are averaging over 7, including Hatate. So that's 10 different players. So it's not to say that he's not been as good, because Tony, you've done the majority of these ratings. Hatate's averaging over 7. Hatate's having a really good season. It's just that some of the guys above him are playing to a level that you're rating 7 or 8 more consistently than Hatate. I think it's just as simple as that. And to be honest, as much as I could make a case for Hatate being player of the year, I could also make a case for Carter Vickers, McGregor, Taylor, Jota, Moy, Kyogo, that are all above him.
Yeah, I mean that's fair comment, and we have watched Hatate put in performances that have earned him a 9, but we have also watched him put in performances that have earned him a 6.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the leveling off comes off, and that's where he's rating. That's why he's 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Again, going back to my test, this is not saying that Hatate's a poor footballer. This is just based on the ratings that we give them and your criteria to meet 10 games threshold, 900 minutes. So, we have said that before. This is our. I don't know about anyone else's rankings of players, but this is our ranking of players, and I think Hatate should probably be higher up that list.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, right, so see if you increased the minutes threshold, you're taking out probably Johnston and Ralston.
Yeah.
So realistically, you're moving them up to 8th. So it's not really much of a difference, because he'd still be below the likes of Carter Vickers, McGregor, Taylor, Jota, Starfelt and Moy. And I think you're right, it's probably because, well, he might put in a 9, you're occasionally giving him a 6, whereas McGregor and Carter Vickers, I mean, we'll come to Carter Vickers, but it is beyond a joke, this guy's ratings. It's and I don't even think it's exaggerating. We say Cameron Carter Vickers 8 is a joke, but it's becoming less of a joke with every passing match, because he very literally gets an 8 far more often than he gets anything else. He is out on his own in a way, in that sense. But we'll come to Alistair Johnston. Callum McGregor is the kind of guy who very rarely gets a 9, although I must note that he did get one in that return from injury up at Pittodrie, which is a remarkable performance with the winner. But he very rarely gets a 7 too. He gets 8s constantly.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you're right, Hatate will get a 9 maybe more often than McGregor, but will get a 6 more often than McGregor as well. And these things all count, because this is why we're saying, whether we like it or not, because ultimately it's our ratings, but I still feel this is more reflective of what we think we are seeing week in, week out, rather than just waiting until the end of the international break and going, right, well, no, because we'll get stuck for Hatate being 10th, we'll put him 3rd, because it doesn't work like that.
I think it's an honest reflection even of what our eyes are telling us.
Yeah, I mean, it does say, I probably would agree with the majority of it. I maybe was a wee bit surprised at Hatate, but as you guys have touched on, for it, he will put in, he's the clear best player on the pitch, those sort of performances, but then he can sometimes dip a wee bit. So it's understandable why a good chunk of the players that maybe they're not getting as many 9s as Hatate across the season, but they're maybe getting more 7s, more 8s. So it makes sense why they're above. Just in terms of Alistair Johnston, I think his sort of position on that list, it shows you how good a signing he's been. I know that's not new information. We've been praising him a lot, but he's been a really, really good signing. You've not really missed Josip Juranovic, and I was one of the people who was quite concerned when he moved on, because I thought, as much as I like Anthony Ralston, there's not going to be a lot of hard games between now and the end of the season. But Johnston's been phenomenal in that position. It's been a brilliant sign.
Tony, he's only played 1,274 minutes, but again, that's well over the entry requirement. And again, like Ralston, must be something to do with playing at right back, Tony, but he's been excellent for virtually every one of those minutes. He got his debut at the Glasgow Derby at Ibrox, and he was handed a 6, right? But since then, I think he's been virtually an 8 the full time, apart from maybe one game, 2 games. He's been simply consistently excellent. That's why he's ended up there. I think maybe when you're looking at it next season, is he going to be able to continue that for a whole season? I don't know, because I'd imagine he will maybe be one of those players that finds it difficult to reach the Cameron Carter Vickers and Callum McGregor levels of continued excellence. But right now, he meets the threshold. He's been excellent. He's the only winter signing that meets the threshold so far.
He has been excellent, and I remember getting stick for giving him a 6 on his debut at Ibrox, if people were saying he was a 7, but my rationale was that he wasn't close to Kent when Kent equalised. That was my butt clause, but I said he had a decent game that apart, but it was still a big butt clause. and that apart. Because if he was tighter, he wouldn't have bent it around him, and Rangers wouldn't have got the lift from that and gone on to take the lead, kind of thing. That kind of moment for me changed the course of that match. Joe Hart's passed back as well. But yeah, so but since then, I mean, I was impressed that day, but I've been impressed with him all along. As you say, he's been consistently excellent, and I think the Celtic supporters have really taken to him as well. And he's another one who you'll be able to tell me, Sean, but I don't think he's got less than a 7 since that Ibrox game.
No, it's been mostly 8s. It's been
again,
overwhelmingly 8s.
Going back to my eyes and most supporters' eyes, I think they would back that up and say because he has got steamed right in, he's taken to that inverted full-back role, and he has performed solidly and excellently. And I was surprised that Johnson was so high up, but then but 2, I was thinking, well, wait a minute, I've been rating him, so am I that surprised? That's the kind of thing. I mean, that I'm going off that, Aidan. I mean, he has performed really well.
Aidan, David Ferguson saying, going on these stats, I wouldn't necessarily call them stats. It is very much an eye test thing. This is. I mean, there's stats in the full write-up, which I'll put the link up to. There's plenty of stats within that, but ultimately these are the average ratings, so it's very much an eye test thing. But it says, is this the strongest team or squad that Celtic have ever had, Aidan? Do you think there's an argument for that?
I feel you guys might be better placed than me to comment.
Is that not about ages, Tony? Is that not about ages?
Potential, but you've obviously seen a few more teams than me, but I think
what a nice way to put it.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know how else to word it, lads, I'll be honest. But I think me and Tony, I might have been yesterday, Tony, we discussed how, or I've been mentioning that this Celtic team that I've sort of seen right now, I think it's probably my favourite one that I've seen. Whether or not that means it's the best I've seen, I don't know. And probably the end of this season, how it turns out in terms of maybe points, goals, and whether or not Celtic win a treble will be better to decide that overall. But I think it's definitely the most exciting team anyway I've seen. But whether it's the best ever or that sort of discussion or strongest squad of recent times, I don't know.
Sean, I'm just going to dig out my old gramophone and get my darts walk-on music. Grandad by Clive Dunn, right? That'll be my new walk-on music. Grandad by Clive Dunn. The gramophone, let me wind it up, and I'll come out every day to that, seeing as how I've seen a few more Celtic teams.
You've seen a few more games.
Yeah, how that's a wonderful turn of phrase there, Aidan, for saying.
I thought it was quite reasonable, to be honest.
You know what I mean? So there you go.
Backhanded compliments. Kaiser coming in saying he thinks it must be reflective. We've won him over, boys. It's based on minutes and performance rating. We all usually give the players around the same score when discussing after games. I agree with you, Kaiser. I mean, there's very rarely, there's occasional disagreement, but for the most part, the regulars on here, we all kind of agree, I think, a lot of the time. Maybe the disagreement's usually between a 7 or an 8 or a 6 or a 7, but it's never like, oh no, he should have been a 4 and you gave him an 8, like that kind of thing. It's never really that extent.
Normally when I put them out, or we put them out on the social media platforms, we'll get a few commenters coming in and saying, oh, such and such is worth a 7 or an 8, and vice versa. It's always a query of a mark. Should have had a higher mark.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people think you're a wee bit lenient. You always think I'm lenient with Joe Hart, that kind of thing. So it's, again, it's all subjective. But most people are seeing what you're seeing. And I think if you were to sit them down, all the commenters, we had a big party in a pub and sat them down and said, right, what would you give him?
Now you're talking, Tony.
Cameron Carter-Vickers, 8, 9. You would be pretty. I think they'd be quite kind of uniform in the discussion.
See, that's why I like doing it this way, because
it
is so easy to just go, right, no, I think we might get stuck if we have Hatate down there, or Keogh goes on the top 3, so we'll make sure that's where we put them. But we've no option. This is what we've rated them. So this is what we've seen game by game. I like it, even if it means that we do get a bit of stick, but I like it because it's almost taken out of our hands by ourselves. It's what we've saw game by game. You can't just wait until the end of it and then just go, right, we'll throw 10 names up that we think will be popular, that kind of thing. Plus, it stimulates a wee bit of discussion on this. But Brian Roberts.
Derek Crawford's up for the big pub debate. Yeah, that's more like it, Tony, you know.
Patrick McLaughlin comes in saying, seeing Johnston had his eyes popping out. I don't know if he thought it was Mikey I was making a case for. And Derek Crawford gets it spot on here. He says, basically, these ratings are all about consistency. That is the easiest way to look at them. And I think that's true, Derek, because if you are consistent, Carter Vickers, McGregor I'm looking at, it doesn't really matter how many minutes you play as long as it's over the threshold. Carter Vickers played over 3,000 minutes and he's still easily top because he's just so consistently excellent that you can't avoid giving him that 8 out of 10 a lot of the time. Callum McGregor, the same. Now, yeah, the two right backs that are in the top 5, if I had increased the minutes threshold, I still think 900 minutes is fair. It's actually, they're nowhere near it. Even if I'd made it 1,000, they would have still qualified. Yeah, the two right backs being there, but it's still to their credit. They've still been excellent.
Yeah.
Greg Taylor, I don't think anybody would complain about him being in the top 5. It was actually him that I was referring to who finished on the same average rating as Jota, but has played slightly more minutes, 500 odd more minutes. So he beat him into the top 5. I don't know if many people would complain about that. Carl Starfelt, I don't know if there might be a few not sure about that one because of the kind of perception of Carl Starfelt, but ultimately, as Aidan likes to say in every predicted 11, him and Carter Vickers together have yet to get beat. Aaron Moy, there's been a few comments saying should he be higher. I think, and I've mentioned this in the write-up, if he was just on, like, see, since he got into the team properly and it wasn't like he started in the cup game and he got 45 minutes and get taken off against St Mirren, that all counts towards it. But see, since he got into the team properly and he's become a lot more fitter and he's come back for the World Cup in particular, his form has been outstanding. He would be higher if it was just that. But unfortunately, he was getting substantial minutes before it and he wasn't doing as well. So that all counts into it. And that's where you come back to 2 of those top 3, at least, Carter Vickers and McGregor, just being insanely, consistently excellent. Yeah.
Aidan, I'm running out of things to say about Cameron Carter Vickers and Callum McGregor, and I might use that insanely, consistently excellent 8. That's all I'm going to say. That'll be my detailed player ratings from now for the 2 of them to the end of the season. Thank you for that, Sean.
You're booking Santa Ponza, Aidan. These boys are saying pub meeting in Santa Ponza to do this.
No comment. I think in terms of running out of things to say about Cameron Carter Vickers, I think you can see I've probably done that, given that I include that same description in most predicted 11s. But yeah, he's been phenomenal. Just what a great signing. I think I'd mentioned previously that we were talking about him. It might have been one of the briefings recently that was more of a kind of Q&A for the majority of it, and there was a discussion about where Carter Vickers ranked sort of relative to modern day Celtic centre backs, with Van Dijk. And I sort of said, obviously, Van Dijk went on at Liverpool and at one point was one of the probably best players in the world, never mind the best centre back in the world. So I'm not going to compare that version to Cameron Carter Vickers, but in terms of their Celtic careers, Van Dijk did make the odd mistake here and there, getting sent off in Europe. But Carter Vickers just seems to never put a foot wrong. When it's getting almost boring to say that, but he just basically does everything right all the time. Brilliant in the air, brilliant in the tackle, his distribution's good. He can sort of go on a run with the ball when it's needed. And yeah, as you do just run out of things to say, which is why I'm now just repeating myself.
Tony, to expand on that, what Aidan was saying there, right? I looked at the spreadsheet when I was doing the entry for Cameron Carter Vickers, and not only has he said 26 different 8s, right? So he's by far had that more than he said a 7, but there's only been 1 6 in the whole season. Now, keeping in mind that when you do these player ratings, 6 is basically what you start on. So if you just have an average game where you don't really do anything wrong, but you're not particularly a standout, then you'll probably end in a 6 as well. So for him to have only had 1 6 tells you right away that it's not just like coasting through games. He's making an active contribution in most games, whether it's defensively, line splitting passes. He's only scored that 1 goal and it wasn't in the league, but regardless, he's still scored a goal. He is making contributions and he's making them well, to the extent that he's getting these ratings, and that's what we're seeing. Yeah,
and also remember the manager says that him and Starfelt have 2 of the hardest roles in the team.
In world football, I would argue, you know what I say about the Celtic centre backs? 2 of the hardest positions in world football.
Constantly man marking, and constantly having to be switched on, and when they do switch off, sometimes they get punished. But The manager is full of praise for what the two of them do. You said there's a perception about Starfelt, but I'm actually quite happy to see him in the top 7 because he is still an accomplished defender, but there are those deficiencies which he needs to iron out his game, like pulling shots in the box and diving in and that kind of stuff. And I guess those games would have seen marks reflective of what he did. But I think all round he is a decent defender and he can defend. And it's no surprise, as Aidan keeps bringing up, that the two of them haven't lost a domestic game when partnered together. And there's a reason for that, because they're both pretty good at what they do. And the manager's mindful of that, and he always kind of flags it up and reminds you that they might look as if they're coasting through games, but they're not, because they have to be switched on. But I think there's a confidence with them now as well, the pair of them. But Cameron and Carter-Vickers, it's just I hesitate to use the word strolling it, but I just think he's a player that's found a spiritual home. He's comfortable in his own skin, and he has shown people. I don't know what happened in every other loan spell that he's been on, but he's finally shown people, I can play this game. I'm a good defender, and here's why. And and let's not forget, he's came up with the brilliant meme of the season for the manager with that wayward pass in Paisley. And so I don't even think I marked him down that day for that, because I just
what was that? Sorry,
the wayward pass in Paisley.
You can't mark him down for one wayward.
It's a brilliant comedic moment, and you know why the meme came around, because I'm just looking at him thinking, that's not so uncharacteristic of you, big man. What happened there? That's not the way we play.
Derek Crawford saying that this is why the criticism of Starfelt's over the top. He needs to stop switching off, but ultimately, the consistency is still there with Starfelt, despite these high profile errors. And you did the write up for him, Tony, and you pointed out that yes, there are these incidents, and they have cost like a penalty and stuff, or more than one penalty. But for the vast majority of the time, he's fine. He's good, actually.
Yeah.
And it kind of almost, those errors get magnified a wee bit with him, because I think there's already a pre-existing perception of him anyway. But I will say, and I've said this before on here, because it was the same in the last rankings, the 3 games in a row that Cameron Carter-Vickers missed earlier in the season, I know Starfelt was injured and stuff as well, but no matter what permutation of goalkeeper and defence was used in those 3 games, you could tell just by looking at the ratings that Cameron Carter-Vickers wasn't available, because everybody else struggled to get 7s and 8s. Yeah. And in that 3-game run, only Greg Taylor got a 7, and that was only once. Nobody else in that defence or the keeper managed to earn a 7 or an 8 from us. And I just don't see that as a coincidence that Cameron Carter-Vickers was out for those 3 games.
Yeah, because we're probably under a lot more pressure than they've ever been in those 3 games.
I think off the top of my head, it was St Mirren, the one that they lost. Motherwell and Leipzig, I think, was the 3 games. And I think that's 3 very different types of opponent. And the one constant was the defence wasn't perceived anyway, wasn't perceived to be as cohesive and as quite as solid as when Cameron Carter-Vickers is there. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
I mean, Aidan, when you're picking your XIs, as you like to call them, they kind of pick themselves, don't they? At this moment in time, you go Johnston right, Taylor left, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Starfelt. And then when Starfelt was maybe injured with his hip flexor, you thought about Kobayashi coming in because he did well in that 45-minute cameo at Tynecastle. But it's par for the course now. You pick those 4 players, isn't it? Because that's your defence, unless something untoward happens.
Yeah, pretty much. And as you said, even if there's an injury, it'd probably be Kobayashi that would come in. The discussions, they tend to be more at the top end of the park. You maybe need to have more of a think about that, but the sort of, even including Joe Hartrell at the moment, is still, he's the clear number 1. Then the defence in front of that is usually, it does pick itself, like you say, Tony, everybody's fit, and it just shows you how consistent it's been. I mean, I know there can be individual errors. You've obviously touched on Starfelt there, the penalty at Ibrox, and then the one in the Hibs game. But overall, you are pretty confident in that defence when they're playing it out from the back, when they're defending set pieces, that they all know their roles in it. They're going to mostly make the correct decisions. And obviously, the clean sheet record this season has been pretty strong. I know I did a newsletter sort of earlier, I think it was at the start of the year, just discussing how Celtic were near at that point to sort of breaking a clean sheet record. They didn't do it ultimately, but so it does kind of show you that the defence has been very strong, and that's exactly what you needed when Ange first came in. Last season at times it was maybe lacking a wee bit, but in the season before that, we know the defence was very poor, but this campaign it's been phenomenal.
Sorry if you could see me moving about there, boys. I was listening, but I tried to sleekily pour myself a wee glass of water and spilled it all over my external hard drive. So I was trying to get the heat on as well. That'll be the power rankings up in smoke. Got a few comments here. Kaiser saying, I think we should do a power ranking of the TCW panel. I suppose it depends. Is it weighted by how many Celtic games you've seen? Because then there's only one way. Tony, me, Aidan. No luck, Aidan. It's come back to bite you.
Fair enough, I'll take that. It's all right.
Pete McGee saying, do you just look at the first 900 minutes, Sean? It takes new players time to bed in, which I think is a fair point. No, it's not just everyone's first 900 minutes. It's just as long as you meet the 900 competitive minutes threshold, then you're in. So, for instance, Ralston's been here since obviously the start of the season in this case, and has like 1,012 minutes or something. So he's spread that over the season. Alistair Johnston's been here since January and has 1,200 minutes, and that's been since January. So essentially it is his first 900 odd minutes, but that's only just because he's a new signing. It's every minute, but if you've made the 900 thresholds, then you qualify. But you are right to point out that for a new signing, it does take time to bed in, but I think that makes it even more impressive that this is Johnston's first 900 minutes, 1,200 he's ended up at, and he's been that consistent that early on that he's ended up in the top three. Now, I would hazard a guess that when it comes to next season, to spread that out, if he's first choice right back over the course of a season, he very well might slide down. The more that you play, the more likely it is that you will get a 6 and a 5 and different things, which just again comes back to Carter Vickers and McGregor just being just insanely consistent.
Yeah, I mean, now Kyogo at number 9 might raise some eyebrows as well, but again, Kyogo, it's a strange thing to say, isn't it? But I mean, he can do, well, appear to be doing little, but his movement's fantastic. We always point that out. And then all of a sudden he'll score and turns his rating upside down.
Remember though, there was, I didn't subscribe to it, but there was a perception earlier in the season that he was a wee bit off it. He wasn't quite at the same level. And he still has, even though I say I didn't subscribe to that, I think he was still playing well statistically.
Yep.
The last update, he was outperforming his XG. He was still up there in terms of counter press and all that kind of stuff. But he certainly has found another level in terms of he's been through a wee clinical phase since he's coming back from the World Cup, or since the team came back from the World Cup. He obviously wasn't there. So I think that all still plays a role in it. O'Reilly was actually quite a big drop because he started the season on fire. He then, and I've said this again, you can kind of split his season into 3 now. You could split it into when he started and he was on fire in pre-season. He came in and he continued that, racked up a fair amount of assists. Then Callum McGregor got injured and he had to adapt his role, which he did well, if not to quite the same level as what he was playing at before it. And then Callum McGregor came back and he was almost kind of usurped in a way by Aaron Moy playing so well. And that's kind of taking its toll on him, even though, again, statistically, he's still one of the most well-rounded players in the league. But I think that has taken its toll on him. But it's the same as what happened with Hatate here. He's not necessarily, there is a dip with O'Reilly, maybe not so much with Hatate, but it's more a credit to the players that are above him than it is a detriment to that player themselves. Because as I say, there was only 2 or 3 that averaged over 7. In a lot of those rankings last year, we'd done 5 entries and it took a while before there was more than 2 or 3 averaging over 7. And already, get into this running, there's 10 this season. So people are just, come back to Derek's comment, I think it was Derek's, maybe David's, is this the strongest squad that Celtic have had? There is a case to be made that even in the eye test, ignoring the advanced stats for a minute, even just the eye test, which this is, that there is that case. When would you have had this before, where there's so many players that over so many minutes are averaging such high rates?
David Ferguson comes in, Aidan, and says, just when you thought you couldn't love Kyogo anymore, he goes and has a random kickabout in a Blaze Park in Glasgow. I think he even had an assist there when the wee boy from the family scored. So he can maybe add that to his tally, Aidan. I'm being flippant, of course, but yeah, Kyogo, I mean, his rating, people might be surprised by that, but it's still no reflection on what we're seeing with Kyogo. His movement is excellent, and I've spoken to a couple of people recently who have compared them to Larsson, and that's compliment of the highest order, Aidan, really.
Yeah, there is no higher praise really for a Celtic striker of modern times than to be compared to Henrik Larsson, is there? But yeah, Kyogo has been phenomenal this season, and I think obviously Sean had touched on he did have a sort of perceived by some people dip early in the season. There also was the Champions League games where he did miss a few chances. I can't remember the sort of specific ratings that you'd given him during that, Tony, during those games, but I was going to guess it probably wasn't, 8s or 9s, based off the sort of games that he probably should have converted like a few chances. But yeah, he's been excellent, and there can be games where he is a wee bit maybe not involved, and then bang, pops up with 2 goals, so that can inflate his rating, like you both mentioned. But yeah, what a signing he's been in. The documentary footage, I know we sort of touched on it yesterday, Tony, but that sort of has endeared him to the fans even more, I think. Some of the footage just came out from that.
Patrick McLaughlin coming in a strong finish to the season from O'Reilly, he thinks, Sean.
Sorry, I think Beach Boys, you just asked a question about what did Kyogo get at Ibrox in the 2-2 draw. So I'm actually in a spreadsheet just now trying to puzzle out what one that is. So game 28, Rangers, would that be right? I think he got 6.
Yeah.
He got 6. World Cup break, and then it was about the 4th game. So a 6 out of 10. And let's see. Cameron Carter-Vickers got a 7. Callum McGregor got a 7. Rayo Hatate got a 7. And then nobody else got a 7 that day. So, sound a bit right, Tony? Is that about what you remember?
Well, I marked him, so it sounds right to me. Of course it does. I mean, but that...
The lesser spotted Joe Hart 5 in that game as well, Tony. The lesser spotted Joe Hart 5.
I think that was a clear reflection of events that day.
Yeah.
I thought Carter-Vickers and McGregor and Hatate were our best players. Kyogo came up with a goal at the end, which gave him a 6.
Which probably explains the 6, doesn't it? That's probably what these boys is getting at. Like, he says he was struggled to get a 6 because he wasn't great, but he scored. So that's probably explains the 6, doesn't it?
It was an important goal. And I think if memory serves, the substitutes all get a decent mark that day because they were all involved in the equaliser, if memory serves.
I've not marked who was the subs, but there's more than 11 marks here, so there would have been. But
I mean that's I think that's what everybody's eyes would have told them that day.
Josip Juranovic was a sub that day, wasn't he? He came on.
Yeah,
he got a 3 that day.
Yeah, because he wasn't very good.
Unfortunately, like that, I know he doesn't count in these rankings anymore, but that did count towards his mark because he was on for. It wasn't just a 5-minute spell at the end. He was on for the majority of that game, and he was just poor. Like that's an example of where that will drag his mark down, but ultimately there's no way around it. He was just poor that day, and he was on for a long enough time to have made a mark, so that stayed in. But he's obviously not in these rankings anyway. So
correct, exactly.
So anyone else stick out, Aidan? I've got one in mind. I've actually got 2 in mind that are back to back. But have you got anybody, or can you guess who I'm talking about?
Can I guess? I don't think I would actually really have anybody else, so I'm trying to see.
Maeda, surely?
Maeda and Haksabanovic, Tony. Yeah. I think Maeda is one of those guys. I think I'll back him to the hilt, and I would still have him in my strongest 11. But it doesn't really surprise me that he's maybe a wee bit lower down, not only because of how consistently excellent a lot of the players above him have been, but also because maybe not to the extent of Abada, but he has got that kind of gene in him where sometimes, despite the effort, it just doesn't go for him. Yeah,
shares can go up as well as down, Sean. That was with Maeda.
With Haksabanovic being there, it's almost the opposite. I still think at some point he's going to burst into life and make it a real difficult decision for Ange Postecoglou in terms of who starts. But just now, whether it was, he got player of the month in November and then he got injured, he's eventually got himself back into the starting conversation again. But he's one of those, he's the Abada type of thing where he's starters minutes and getting quite a lot of minutes, but not always as a starter have counted against him, I think. Because, if any of you read the kind of advanced stats bomb on ball value update, he's an absolute monster in them. He's absolutely, he's just, this is why I'm thinking it's only a matter of time. If he's returning these kind of advanced stats while he's mostly a sub, what is it going to be like when he gets a chance to start more often? Now I know sometimes it might, like, if you play more, you're more likely to decline. But so far, in both of the updates with the advanced stats, he's been clearly superb. And I think when you see him, it comes across like that as well. That's why we're always quite buzzing about him, even though he doesn't start all that much.
Yeah, Aidan, I think we're all in agreement here that there is a player lurking within Haksabanovic, and it is a matter of time before that player is unleashed and he does run into a consistent run of form, basically, because we've seen too much from him in flashes to know that there is something about to come to the fore, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get excited by Haksabanovic every time he's on the pitch, really. I even think back to the sort of Real Madrid home game, which obviously we said overall was a decent enough performance. At near the end it dipped when Haksabanovic came on. He was alive, he was looking dangerous against a sort of top level team, and from then I know he's had sort of spelled in and out injury, but I think he's been a really, really good signing. Even if it's not this season, I think next season he's definitely going to kick on and become a sort of mainstay in the team, to be honest.
Tony, Beach Boys coming in saying Aidan looks like he's in school and doesn't know the answer to the question the teacher just asked him. Apologies, Aidan. It was just an opinion, but punishment exercise en route.
That's grossly unfair on young Aidan.
Ryan Roberts saying, you spilled water. Aye, right, Sean. I will keep that for the Friday show, Brian. Eric Crawford coming in saying, Tony, did you have to sell the wardrobe to fund Castle Haggerty's renovations? He's seen it on Dickinson's Real Deal.
See, for the Feng Shui punters out there, I'm staring at the wardrobe. All I've done is do that. That's all. There you go. Just to let you know, it's still here. It's still alive and well. It's over
there. Tony, I'll throw this one from Brian at you, because I always make a wee joke about it with you, because I always say you give him a 7 for tying his laces and all that kind of stuff. Brian Roberts says, what about the saves Big Joe makes? To be honest, Tony, do you have any problem with where he's ended up in this? I don't really think I do, but...
No, I don't have a problem where he ends up. And I know it is a running joke with you and me. You'll say, 7 for Joe Hart, you know what I mean? You took a bye kick, that kind of stuff. and I laugh. And my point is, goalkeepers are charged with the task of keeping the ball out the net. And I think for a long time, in long periods in matches, Joe Hart doesn't have anything to do. How many times, Darry, he was a virtual spectator in the opening 45 minutes, right? Or a variation of that kind of sentence, because he is most of the time. And I do big him up when he does. You do have to keep your concentration levels, but I'm not showing of putting the boot in when I have to. In terms of Joe Hart, you know what I'm like. I said he's an unerring ability to throw himself the wrong way at penalties.
Hi, which is what Derek's mentioning, yeah.
You know, so if he can save a penalty, you know, so indeed, and I you know, and I've mentioned that. I don't understand why he can't go the right way. He might not save it, but I mean, I don't know. I would need to be taught or explained by a goalkeeper to me. But even if you just watch the ball, you can go the right way. It doesn't mean you'll save it. But hey, what do I know? I'm here and he's playing. So, but yeah, I just think that there are times when he does come up with big saves. But there are times when, you know, you think he could have done better. There are many goals he's conceded where you think he could have done better. And I'll mention that, but I think from Joe Hart's perspective, if he starts off with a 6, if he makes a crucial save or a block, then that kind of goes to a 7. Very rarely does Joe Hart get an 8. I don't think. I mean, I might have given him an 8 at one point, but you're always a kind of 6 or a 5 man, aren't you? You know, because
not necessarily a 5. A 5 would be if he like fumbles and doesn't do much.
Well, Ibrox, you get a 5.
Aye, if whatever he's got to do, he doesn't do. I think a 6, I would probably have him averaging a 6 a lot, because, and there's a couple of comments saying like a goalkeeper that would be getting 8s or 9s is a signifier of a deeper issue, which I agree with. But I really think there's games sometimes where he very literally doesn't have to make a save. And I know there's other things to consider, like how much is he talking to his defenders, how much is he influencing proceedings and stuff. But I think a lot of the time, I think he would probably sit at a 6 when he's not got that much to do. Get plenty of comments coming in, Tony, but I want to mention Jota. I said he get beat out of the top 5 because Taylor's played more minutes and they ended in the same rating. But Aidan, are you surprised? Did you think he should be maybe top 3 because he is Jota after all?
Yeah, I probably did. I think I thought it would have been in the top 4 anyway, to be honest, just because, like you say, it's not a very analytical thing to say, but it is Jota, and I feel like there's always a chance he'll be able to do something in a game. But when you do break it down, probably, like we mentioned with Kyogo, there maybe was spells that he was quiet in matches. Obviously, he had an injury as well at one point. In some of the Champions League games, he was a wee bit off the ball. Only got a couple of goals, but there was maybe matches that he didn't really make that much of an impact. So I think when you think about it in that context, it probably is fair. But when it first got flashed up, or when I first seen it, I should say, I was a wee bit surprised he wasn't in the top 4.
Tony, with Jota, I want to point out that he's moved down 4 spaces, right? But his average rating is virtually the same, which to me speaks to his consistency in that position. It's really, really difficult, I think, to earn consistent high marks because you're fairly or unfairly, you're judged by your output a lot in moments in that kind of position that he plays. Yeah. So it's a testament to him. But his rating's virtually not changed. So it's just, again, you've got players above him that are just consistently edging, maybe Taylor's had 3 9s, for instance. You've got McGregor and Carter Vickers we've spoke about. Johnston's virtually been an 8 since he arrived. Ralston has not played as much as the likes of Jota and stuff, but gets 8s because he's just been excellent. So I think, although he's slid down, the fact that his ratings virtually remained unchanged, you're kind of like, well, aye, because it's Jota. He's still got the output. He's still been doing it.
He's still a role model of consistency, isn't he? And bearing in mind, he plays in a position where, inconsistency can dog wingers, but he certainly produces a steady level of performance most of the time, Jota, which is reflective in the match. Top 6, I think, is fair. I think he's come onto a game recently, so by the end of the season, would I expect him to move up a couple of places? Probably. And I think your eyes tell you, if you're looking at the Celtic team just now, who would you rate as a better player than Jota at the minute? Cameron Carter-Vickers, McGregor, maybe Hatate, although we spoke about Hatate, but he would be in your top 4 or 5, wouldn't he? And he's 6, so he's not too far away from where you would expect him to be, but I fully expect him to come with a late run because as of late, he's shown some real quality in the matches, and I expect him to finish maybe top 3, top 4 come June when the season finishes.
Well, do you want to know an interesting stat about Jota? Right? Do you know how I was saying last season he was ending with a double?
Yes.
Double figures for goals and assists. Now he's on course to do that again, both in the Premiership and overall. I think he's only 1 away overall, but in the Premiership he's a couple away. I think he's 9 goals and 8 assists, but it's in 1,819 minutes, right? And statistically speaking, last term, right, he averaged a league goal contribution every 109.6, and this season it's every 107. So technically he's improved in that sense, which is scary. So if you think what's going to happen in the rest of the running, I do think it's a scary thought for the rest of the league.
Yeah, Aidan, Jota, everybody loves Jota, don't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, he's phenomenal, really. I feel like he can do everything at some point. And one thing I probably would like to see him maybe do more is take more of the set pieces potentially. I know he does take corners, but after that free kick against Real Madrid, I was thinking he was going to be on sort of most of the attacking free kicks. I know he's had a few attempts in there, but that may be the only thing I would like to see a bit more of. But he can just do everything as a winger, and he is that player. If it gets right down to it, you really need a goal. I know there's not been a lot of that this season because Celtic have been quite dominant, but if you are getting paid back in games, he is the player that can go on and do the damage, whether it's getting assist or even be involved in the build-up to a goal, playing a key pass or score himself. He's a phenomenal player.
I think we've touched on mostly everybody there, Tony.
I think we have.
don't think we've spoke much about Greg Taylor, but we don't need to. You all know where I stand on that, and you've followed the instructions that he needs to get a 10 every 3 weeks. I think we'll know that.
And Aaron Moy, probably not spoken about Aaron Moy to any great degree.
Well, only in the context of usurping Matt O'Reilly, I suppose. I mean, Aaron Moy's, as I say, been excellent since the World Cup. He was starting to become excellent before that as well, once he got up a bit of fitness, but in particular since he came back to the World Cup tone, ain't it?
Yeah, correct. And that's reflective in his top 8 rating. And again, he's another one I can see moving higher before the end of the season. Maybe top 5, top 6, even top 4. But it's as I say, that's an hour, guys. Unbelievable. We've enjoyed that. Hope you've enjoyed it. We try and fill the international week with some innovative stuff, and obviously the Celtic Way Power Rankings are one way to do it. Hazel Finn, thank you guys for getting me through this international break. Nice, that's very kind, Hazel. We'll try to get ourselves through it more than something. But yeah, we try our best. We hope you enjoy that. It's always a great talker, Sean, and even it stimulates wonderful debate. That
it does. In the full list and various stats, some stats bomb graphics, and we write ups for every single player, split between myself and you, Tony. They're all in that link that I've put in the comments, and it's in the description as well. So you can fire onto that and give that a wee read on your lunch break, or by the time we've finished, probably tea time. But
yes, exactly the way we're going. But we'll end it now on that note, and I'll just say to everybody, ticker tape running along the bottom. The deal ends tonight. Subscribe to the Celtic Way. Cost you £1 for 3 months for unlimited access to everything that's written on the website, and you'll see those power rankings that Sean has compiled, and the descriptions that Sean and myself did as well. And all for a click of a button. Cost you £1 for 3 months. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Thank you to all the guys for coming in, the contributors today, your comments talking about the players and the ratings and the power rankings. We can't do it without you. We love the interaction. We say it all the time, but thanks for your subscription, and thanks for listening and tuning in. All that remains for me to say is, Sean, thanks for your contribution as well. First class. Aidan, always first class. And we'll mention our sponsors, SENECA. The Celtic Way Morning Briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. Enjoyed that today, boys. Hope you enjoyed it at home. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all again tomorrow. Take care.
Cheers, guys.